Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock on the 8th of January. We will convene the first Building Code Legislative Committee meeting of the year. Start out with a roll call, please.
Tom Handy,
Here.
Todd Byreuther,
Here.
Jay Arnold, Tom Young,
Here.
Roger Haringa, Joe Anderson,
Present.
Ben O'Murrow,
Here.
Angela Hott, Representative Alex Rammel.
Afternoon.
We do have a quorum, Tom.
Okay, very good. Is there anybody from the public that would like to be recognized?
Tim Atterbury, Associated General Contractors of Washington.
Thank you, Tim. Patrick?
Yes, thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
Welcome. Anybody else?
Rick, excuse me, Rick Blumenthal, WSU Energy Code Program Coordinator.
Thanks, Rick. Anybody else?
Yes, Michael Transu, and I'm here with the Washington Aggregate and Concrete Association.
Welcome. Others? Okay, we'll move on to the next item then, to review and approve the agenda for today.
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to review or to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Next is the minutes from our last meeting, which was November 21st. They were available. I don't know if they're going to be scrolled on the screen, but if
We'll get them up there in just 1 second.
I'm
Alrighty.
having an issue. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no worries.
Give me one
This,
moment.
this shouldn't be the first opportunity people will have had to look at them. So
All right. There they are. You see them?
I certainly
Yep.
do.
Sorry.
okay, that's the end of those there. Any discussion?
This is Todd. I move to approve.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks, Angela, for the second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, legislative updates next. Dustin, do you want to?
Yeah,
Let
I'll
us know
go
what you
kick this
set
one
out.
off.
Okay.
Excuse me. All right, so welcome everybody. This is the first council meeting of the new year. So happy new year to everybody who's here. Hopefully you had a good holiday season. Didn't get too wet, didn't get too cold. I know some of those in Washington did not, or did, sorry. Anyway, the legislative session's due to kick off here in the next week on the 12th. And we have, this is the short session of the Washington 2-year cycle. So last session we had bills introduced, some of them passed. Any of them that did not pass are still alive. And in our bill tracking stuff that we have here today, let me go ahead and share my screen so I can, you guys can see what I'm talking about as well. This one's posted for the meeting as well today in the meeting documents. Go. All right, so on the sheet posted today, anything that's a white line is a bill that's still alive from the last session, and then anything in yellow is a new bill that has been pre-filed for this session. Before we get into reviewing each individual line here, talk about the status column on all the bills. Anything that is not labeled as pre-filed is representative of its position at the end of the 2025 session. So until the session actually starts, those statuses will remain the same. Next week, those will be changed because all of these bills that are still alive will go back to their house of origin and committee of origin and kind of start the process over. And then at the end of this second year short session, any of these bills that do not pass will be dead, and any of the topics that, if they want to come back, have to be refiled with new bill numbers. And before I move on further, is there any questions kind of about what we have on here as far as color coding or anything like that? I know it's not everybody's first rodeo, but in case there's questions, I'll pause.
Guess I have a quick question, which is the 1458 from last session was refiled as 2273. I believe they're substantially the same.
By my analysis, they are like almost identical. And I don't have a good indication on why they're refiled, but Representative Rammel, would you have a input on that?
Oh, sorry, I had a different question. I
Okay.
don't have an answer to that.
Yeah. So I don't know why it got refiled, but they're substantially similar. There's a couple new sentences in 2273, and they don't really change the impact to the SBCC workings as the analysis from last session as well. And so, Representative Remmel?
Yeah, just a question on the position. That's the position of the of this body
It
on
is.
the
So
bill.
when we start off on these, so all the stuff on the white lines would be the positions of this body and kind of the review of SBCC staff. So when I start the ones in yellow, I don't take a position on them at all.
Yeah.
So that'd be kind of the position of DES at this point. And then if this body decides to take a position, the one big issue, which is kind of what I was getting into, is this committee is not empowered to make policy decisions or inform on policy changes directly. So if that topic comes up, we need to bring it up to the full council and have a council motion before we change those positions to oppose, support, or concerns.
So I guess what I was going to suggest is that there is a meaningful difference between bills that were just filed that
Right.
we're neutral on, but neutral because we haven't discussed it yet, and bills that were in the process last year that we discussed and decided to remain neutral. So maybe there's a neutral category and a TBD category.
Yes, I can definitely update that for our next meeting so that it's more meaningful when we get new stuff on here, that it's representative of what kind of the DES take is on it versus what this body's take is on it.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Mr. Tom Young.
Okay, hey, I want to disclose that I've had some very recent activity on one of these bills. So the BIAW organized a meeting with Governor Ferguson, which occurred yesterday, and BIAW wanted to discuss three topics. You know, I spoke on one topic, which is HB 2141, which is essentially discussing the update cycle of the building codes. And I just want to say that I didn't support the 10-year cycle update as in that bill, but I said I would support a 6-year. So that's just a disclosure.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. All right. So, any other questions on kind of like the overview of what the 2-year process looks like, and kind of what we're looking at as we go through here? My plan is to kind of just run through these. They're organized slightly differently than they were in the last legislative session as far as the way we're looking at them, not necessarily how the legislature organizes them. We've categorized them into high priority, medium priority, low priority, and then monitoring, and then there's an other category as well that is representative of bills that have come in recently that haven't had the initial review by SBCC staff. So the three that are at the bottom of this page, I have reviewed two of them, and then there's one more that's still pending a little bit of a review for us. So if it pleases the group, I can just run through it from top to bottom, and we'll get the kind of important ones out of the way, and then hopefully we can get through the list here without too much going on. Does that work for everybody? Or Representative Ramel?
Sorry, one other thing. Just Dustin, you've seen the draft bill that I've been working on, which has not yet been pre-filed, but which this committee has discussed.
Yes.
Does that go at the bottom of the list or the bottom of the agenda for today?
I mean, so for today, I was considering that to be other business.
Okay. Okay. I'd love to get feedback from this committee.
Okay, it's my hope to get there here pretty quick.
Okay.
Todd?
And then the bill that Tom just referenced, is that on the list? I don't see it.
The building is the HB 2141. It's in the high priority section, highlighted in yellow, the top one there.
Oh, I just heard a different number. Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right, so getting into the high priority bills, we have SHB 1254, which is the Wildland Urban Interface bill from last session. This one is seeking to kind of take out the specific building code or building hardening requirements that are listed in RCW 19.560 and put the ultimate rulemaking authority back in the hands of the SBCC. And currently we are not doing anything with the Wildland Urban Interface Code and are awaiting development of maps for SBCC to start work on that. And this one would just really level the playing field as far as what rules we can bring to that code and give the complete rulemaking authority back to SBCC. As mentioned earlier, we have SHB 1458, and it's very closely related to HB 2273. The main difference is that one was filed in 2025, one's filed for the 2026 session. And there's very minor changes in 2273 and doesn't change any of the analysis that we did on it in the last session. So there's really not much change there. I would expect to see maybe more traction from 2273 than 1458, but we'll stand ready to potentially attend hearings for either of those should they pop up on the agendas. Getting into HB 2141, building codes. This one, when we cut down to it, seeks to put a 10-year pause on building code adoption. So after the 2024 codes go into effect, there would be a 10-year pause where there could be no substantive updates to the building codes. And then after that 10-year pause, I believe it's the 2036 building code, would be a 6-year building code cycle after that. And so that one would be pretty impactful to the goings on of the Building Code Council. It should allow us to maybe reset the cycles a little bit and plan for those longer periods. But it's also, we would lose the benefit of getting updated building codes on a more regular cadence. And so we would also be limited in our rulemaking authority if this bill passes. We wouldn't be allowed to approve local amendments to the building code. We would not be allowed to undertake any sort of substantive change. And so I'll pause there. Looks like there's some hands. Jay?
Yeah, thank you. One of the questions that I had was on, as we look at, let me back up. As we look at the building codes as they have been revised, we have a number of things we've dealt with as emergency rules as the International Building Code has updated standards and has reorganized codes that don't make substantive impacts from a policy standpoint. What's the read of how this bill is written on allowing that to happen? I saw some language on like health, safety, and welfare, but I wasn't sure if this kind of general housekeeping with the codes would be allowed for those kind of minor amendments.
So, by my read, the Building Code Council would retain its emergency rulemaking authority. So, just like with our emergency rulemaking process now, we would have to determine that emergent nature of the changes trying to occur. And we should be able to make small changes, but as long as it's not a whole new version of the code that we're adopting as an emergency, we should be able to make those small changes.
And then the local amendment prohibition would not allow for um, local jurisdictions to do custom codes in any way.
It would not allow for the local jurisdictions to say adopt a different code or make a more stringent code than what we have going. So currently, local amendments can bring more stringent requirements to the code at the local level, but cannot weaken the code provisions. And so it would be static at the local jurisdiction unless there was some sort of emergent situation. But I think that the intent is to pretty much freeze the codes for that 10-year period.
Great. Thank you for the clarifications.
You're welcome. Chell.
Yeah, I went through this in some detail because it's well, it would do a lot of things. It would basically disband the Building Code Council as I see it. If the Code Council can't really do anything for 10 years, then why would we have people as part of the Building Code Council? We would lose all staff expertise. We would lose all the adjacent expertise of people who help create the building codes and run models for the building codes and all that. So it would put us way behind in terms of expertise as a state. The reason why they're updated 3 years is because builders, engineers, and manufacturers are innovative. We're always innovating new materials, new practices. As an architect, I see new materials come out all the time. And making sure that these are allowed in the code is because we are able to modify the code. For example, mass timber was nearly approved at the national level, and we as the Building Code Council approved it in both the 2015 and 2018 energy or building codes. And that has spurred a lot of mass timber construction in Washington, which I think most people would say were good. We could not do that kind of thing with this bill in place. Another example is new refrigerants that save money and have less pollution. We could not do that under this kind of bill. The legislature also, how many times did we get asked in the last couple of years by the legislature to do specific things? This bill actually says that they can't do that. They can't even ask us to do things. So WUI code, multiplex, single stair, the legislature would be saying, oh, we can't even ask you to do that for us and update the codes. It's, when people are worried about cost, about affordability, if you look at the facts, it's not the building codes or the energy code that are causing most of the issues. It's permitting, it's zoning within cities, which the legislature is beginning to adopt, modify, but it's not the building codes that are causing that. It's interest rates. It's if you look at the cost of housing, it goes up roughly equally for existing buildings as new buildings. That tells you that new buildings are not crazily more expensive. It's interest rates and many other things. And our codes are correlated with each other, and this would kind of stop that process as well. I think it would then people would get frustrated with codes and consider this a piece of broken government, which I think some people would applaud. But I don't support the idea of breaking government on purpose, just so that people can say, oh, that's a piece of broken government. I mean, codes that were written 13 years ago are missing a lot of things. The builders in Louisiana supported an update to the codes simply because they were concerned about getting sued because the codes were so old that there were the potential for mold issues. And because they had been opposing codes for so long, they actually got behind supporting an update to the Louisiana energy codes. So there's a lot of reasons why this is really lousy, and I can't see how we could really do anything other than oppose it based on the merits.
And before we move forward, before I call on you, Angela, just characterize the local amendment stuff a little bit further. SBCC only approves local amendments that affect residential construction. And so we wouldn't be allowed to approve those. So I guess if the local jurisdictions wanted to make modifications to make the code more stringent that doesn't affect residential construction, they would be empowered to do that. And SBCC wouldn't have a hand in that approval process. Anyway, so sorry I missed that one. Angela, go ahead.
Yeah, so that was one of the things I was gonna say was what it affects, mostly is that new jurisdictions would not be able to implement sprinkler regulations. That's a regulation that SBCC has to approve for residential uses, but anything non-residential, they would still be able to amend. And secondly, the bill actually does allow for legislative direction. Anything that is passed in legislation as a directive to the SBCC, the council would still be responsible for doing. It doesn't change that. But then a lot of the stuff that Jill said, I agree with. Another thing that it'll do is one of the big things that's talked about is that, well, you'll be able to use the alternate means, to bring, if you want to use things from new codes or whatever that haven't been adopted. The problem with that is that it'll create inconsistencies across jurisdictions in the state, because just because one jurisdiction approves an alternate means doesn't mean another one has to. So basically, you might be able to do it in one place, but not another. And then another thing that'll affect builders, code enforcement, developers, everybody, is also that 10-year jump. That's skipping all those codes and then jumping into, I believe it's 3 or 4 code cycles later, brand new. So you've just missed all of those little, what would be considered small incremental changes as of now to huge changes. Once now it's like, oh wait, we've never done that before. It's totally new ways of doing things. It's basically could be starting over and learning all new code, implementing all new construction practices, things like that. So it's not just a let's put a pause and then start back up. It's basically a time jump. And another thing, a lot of the amendments that are currently done to the codes are pre-approvals, as I think Chell had talked about, pre-approvals of incoming changes that are made at the ICC level. And those changes do take years and years to develop and come on through the codes, and we pre-approve them. At this point, that would, stop. And any new innovations, whether cost saving, easier, just more practical, would basically be non-existent. So I'm not going to speak to going to the 6-year code cycle. That's a different animal, but it's just the 10-year jump on all of the construction codes, especially the life safety ones, is to me something that I think we would need to oppose. Thanks.
Representative Remmel.
Thanks. Yeah, I won't pile on with any more reasons. Sounds like there's growing consensus. Banning innovation in the building space is probably a bad idea. But as Tom alluded to, there is a kind of a full court press on this bill. And so I think it really does make a lot of sense for this body to speak up and talk about what the concerns are. If there's, the capacity to do so, get back to the whole council, get a vote, and send a letter in the next 2 weeks, I'd urge that. If there's not time to do that in the next couple of weeks, I would urge that you send a letter expressing concerns that says clearly, hey, we haven't had an official vote on it, but these are the concerns that members of the Code Council would raise about this bill, and get that out the door in the next couple of weeks. I think Shell and Angela have a good list, at least a good starter list of the concerns that should go into that letter.
Tom Young.
Yeah, so as I kind of said earlier, so I didn't support 10 years, but I do want to let's say disagree with Chell on the cost of housing. So I am a builder developer. I put my own money into a project in buying the land. I get the financing. I buy the lumber. I hire the consultants, and the a big cost of to me the largest cost in the cost of housing really comes from regulations, um, impact fees, building codes, some of the building codes, not all of them, but and impact fees and development regulations. So this bill is in because the cost of housing has become so unbearable. And so, this is an attempt to create some reprieve to allow people to be able to afford their homes and have home ownership. And it's not just about home ownership because it also affects the cost of rent. So this is we go through a bunch of these bills, many are targeted to helping reduce the cost of construction and development. So this is a big topic for the legislature to drive down the cost of housing and to create more housing. And so this is their attempt to deal with this social crisis that we have for housing unaffordability. For all of you who already own your homes, doesn't seem like a big pressing matter for you, but for those young families and for those old people, who rely on affordable housing, this, cost of housing is a serious matter for them.
Chell?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I appreciate your insights on there. Yeah, impact fees could be high in some areas. Seattle doesn't have them. Bellevue has them. Different jurisdictions have different impact fees. I think, yeah, I wanted to add the one thing about the legislature, which is that it says earlier in there that the legislature can direct the building code council to do things, but then on page 4, under subitem 3, it says the council may engage in legislatively directed projects, planning, study, and stakeholder engagement, provided that no adoption or implementation of new or revised codes shall occur until 10 years after. So that's where I was getting that one piece about the legislature prohibiting itself. I could be misinterpreting it, and maybe it's just a conflict within the bill itself.
Todd?
Thank you, Dustin. And Chair, I guess my question is, we haven't established this year what our process is in the legislative committee. It sounds like we want to flag this and either take an actual motion either now or as a list of those that we flag in this meeting that we'll bring forward to the committees and or the full council. And then just a reminder to everyone, in the legislative session, we have always intended to stand ready as a full council for a special meeting just for the purpose of taking a position if needed, because it has to move quickly. We can't wait a full month. So we do anticipate during legislative session that we could have a special meeting just to take a vote. Because just a reminder, we only speak as a full council when we take a position. So thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Angela?
Yeah, just one question. I mean, I know for the bill's proponents and stuff that I haven't seen personally, and if it's out there, I would love to see it. Any documentation that shows how much of an increase in the cost of building houses there was between the 2018 and the 2021, or even from the 15 to the 21 on the I codes. I'm not talking about the energy code. I'm talking about the actual construction life safety codes. I haven't ever seen anything that shows, and as someone who like watches the major, changes and updates, I personally haven't noticed anything that would drive the cost of construction from those codes specifically and on how they're affecting it. I understand the energy code, and I also understand that most of these bills, whenever they're targeting all of the codes, from even talking with people from, that side, they admit that usually they're aiming at the energy code. So I personally would just like to see any documentation that they may have on how just the ICC codes, the amended ICC codes, how they have affected the cost of construction from, say, 2015 to 2021 between those codes. That I think would be helpful for a lot of people. Thanks.
Tom?
Okay, so Angela, so life safety, I don't have the numbers, and the BIAW may come up with the numbers. It's something I could also produce from our own cost data. But life safety does not raise the cost much. So if we really want to narrow it down, there's many things, like cost of labor and, labor laws and all this stuff. But if we're put into three large categories, it's going to be your energy code. It's going to be the development codes, because there's a mishmash of development codes from all over the cities with no consistency. And many of the development codes are not based on any specific purpose, but on emotions from, citizens that push it to their city council to put it in a code. Okay, impact fees are really getting out of hand. And then, of course, there's something that, is really hard for us to control with any kind of legislation or rules and stuff. It's just the market when in the purchase of the land. So those are, where most of the cost increases occur on, building any new homes.
Richard?
Thank you. Let's see. I can address some of these questions. I put together a report that right now has not been published, and it is a research report that I spent most of last year producing that talks about how to save money using the code. And this is basically on the 2021 code. We got a grant from the state to do this. I can read you some numbers that I have here, but I can tell you just shortly up front, bottom line is the code does not drive the most expensive costs for housing, period, end of story. It is not the energy code that does it, okay? So let me read you some information here. Now, I don't have it as far back as 2020 or 2015, but I did go between 2022 and 2024. Okay, so between 2022 and 2024, where there was a 4% increase in cost of homes in construction costs alone. 4%. Okay, that's construction costs. Those costs were based on the interior finishes were up 24%. Interior finishes carry mostly labor cost, not material cost. Okay, I was a contractor for over 40 years. I can attest to that, and I can prove it with lots of backup if anybody needs to see that. It's a labor cost. So again, that doesn't have anything to do with the energy code. People need to understand that. The major systems have gone up 19%. Mechanical systems, they have all gone and increased. The efficiency between the systems has not been a big increase. It's just been an increase overall. 19%, almost 20%. Those are huge. So now just between those two, just between those three, you got a 4% for construction costs over a 2-year period, plus 24%. That's 28% plus another 20%. So 48% has nothing to do with the code. Okay, that you're telling me now the other half is the code. So what we put together on this was a whole description on how to use the code and you'd have to use it in a UA calculation. You can't use it prescriptively because prescriptively is more expensive, okay? Because you can't do trade-offs when you're using the prescriptive path, 402.1.3 table, but you can do it when you're using the UA path. And when you use those, there are many options that we have put together to show you how to use those pathways efficiently. We also have what's called the cookbook that was put together with a pile of recipes for every single type of construction size, 1,500, below 1,500 to above 5,000. Okay, we have examples on how to do this, and the cookbook produced by Better Buildings Northwest, not ours, contracted them to do that, have recipes for each of these. Some of these recipes only require 2 or 3 credits or credit selections. So when this comes out, right now what's happening is the reason it's been delayed for so long and hasn't come out is because we have to put in language that's accessible, and it came out from a 27-page document to a 66-page document. There is no way a trade contractor or any other person in the construction industry is going to go through a 66-page document to find a couple of few percentage points. They're not going to do that. So I have to go back and reduce this down and condense it to get it together so that it can be published, because it will be both useful for the 2021 code and the 2024 code, because a lot of stuff will carry over. So I just wanted to put that out there for everybody to understand that there is a document coming out there, and it does show that it really is not the code. That said, I take huge exception to anything past 3 years for lots of reasons that everybody already expressed, and for other reasons as well. Selfishly, for our department, the code department, we provide all the technical assistance. I can't even imagine how much time it will take to recreate educating anything longer than 3 years, because right now it takes us almost 3 years to get all our stuff together. So it's a very difficult task, and it takes a lot to get done. The other problem is that when new materials come out, and I'll give you an example, Insultex is one of those materials that people have been trying to use on the exterior for continuous insulation. The problem with that is it doesn't comply. It's a lie. Okay, they're saying that it can give you like an R10 or something like that in 3/8 of an inch. It's not true. It has not been proven, and it will never be proven that it will meet the requirements. But if we go to a 10-year or even a 6-year period, that stuff is going to be put on, and no one's going to be able to stop them, because no one's going to have the education from our department to say you can't use that. So thank you for listening. I hope I didn't vent too much, but I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. Tom? Oh,
Oop, there we go. What was just said kind of changed my thinking a little bit from what I was going to say. I'd be really interested to see what that document has in it, and how it's been vetted and so on and so forth. But I think Todd brought up a good point, that, and I appreciate the prompt here. I think that this bill just doesn't kind of stand out there, you know, in a vacuum. There's a lot of people that have been talking about and thinking about various parts of this, you know, for quite some time, you know, including the Washington Association of Counties and others. And I think that, you know, perhaps that it should be brought to the full council for discussion on what parts of this the council, you know, as a functioning body believes is really maybe in the best interest of, you know, affordable housing and some other initiatives that are pretty strong right now, and just the functionality of the council going forward. But also weighing perhaps, you know, the workload that the council is now, you know, on underway with, you know, and how sustainable that is with the current schedule we have. So I think there's a lot of different things to consider with this. You know, and maybe there's some place somewhere in the middle that this ought to land, you know, for a lot of different reasons. And so I'd urge us to, you know, advance this to the council for further discussion and perhaps, you know, maybe coming up with an agreed upon recommendation for legislation information. So that's my 2 cents.
Tim.
Yeah, Tim with AGC. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents for Council Member Scott Bastini, who's with Anderson Construction. He supports 2141. Part of Scott's duties with Anderson Construction is he's a business development person. So he talks with developers, puts pen to paper on a daily basis to see if construction can be done for projects, commercial projects that are sitting on the sidelines, waiting for financing, waiting for investors. A lot of times, you know, Shell, you're right that interest rates are a problem. I'm not sure if there's anything we can do here to handle that. You're right, Shell, that permitting is a problem, but that seems like the solution there lies with cities and counties to hire more permitting people. But for our purposes here, we can do something about the codes. Scott supports the 10-year delay just because he talks to actual developers on the commercial side who are thinking about developing. And a lot of times it takes 3, 4, 5 years, maybe even 10 to build up an investor group, to get financing, to actually pull the trigger on a project. So, I'd say, you know, most medium-sized and large commercial construction firms, they have business development people, and there are hundreds of commercial projects that are sitting on the sidelines because developers don't trust you. They just watched the very high profile energy code fight we had over the last few years. They don't trust that you won't do something maybe even worse than what you've done already. So they want a 10-year window so that they can accurately put pen to paper and actually make these projects come to fruition. And so that architects have wages, so that engineers have wages, so that construction workers have wages, and we're sort of progressing in our state. So I just want to say, you know, interest rates clearly a problem, permitting clearly a problem, but so are the codes, and developers don't trust that they won't move around while they're trying to build financing. And so this is just real world stuff that developers and business development folks do on the commercial side. They put pen to paper and they want to know, you know, rightfully, the developer wants to know how much things will cost if he pulls the trigger on a project. So I just think that when someone like Scott, who's dealing with these developers every day and putting pen to paper, says that he supports 2141, we ought to listen.
Thank you, Tim. Representative Rimmel.
Hey, I'm just going to urge that we kind of move this conversation along. We've got 15 minutes left in this meeting, and we've got a lot still to cover. Is there a motion in order to move this up to the full council? What's the next step here?
Yes, if we're going to move this one specifically to the council, we can do a motion now, or I was thinking we might take a moment to wait till the end, but if you're prepared to make a motion, Representative Remmel, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I'd make that motion.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to move this up to the council for further discussion. Any further discussion on the motion?
I guess I have a question.
Go ahead.
I have a question, which is, given the timelines that Representative Rimmel brought up, our meeting is on the 23rd. Is that consistent with your seeing of the timing, Representative Rimmel?
Yeah, I think if a decision could be made at that point and a letter sent to, I think what's important is that the chair get communication about this. I think that timeline is appropriate.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion? Jay? On the motion?
Thank you. In addition to bringing it to the council on the 23rd, I'd like to move to amend the motion that we prepare a letter educating on the impacts of a 10-year cycle and a 6-year cycle on work like legislative mandates and the other things that have been discussed without taking a position, and that we ask staff to return with a letter next week at this committee meeting to do that in addition to council considering a position on this bill.
Staff got the capacity to do that?
We've already kind of made the preliminary kind of evaluations on that aspect of what it would ask for staff to do. We can flesh it out a little further, and I think we'd be well positioned to bring it next week.
All right, is that a friendly amendment then?
Yeah, friendly enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Point order, Chair, was that second agreed to?
Yeah. Yeah, that's friendly.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? All right, moving forward.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dustin.
Just really
Moving
quick.
on, or go ahead, Katie.
Can I just ask a really quick favor of the gentleman that spoke about the report? I think it was Richard Blumenthal. We are used to reading long reports. And so if it's possible to send that report to us, I would really appreciate having some of that information for the meeting when it comes.
Okay, Tim, any last quick comments from the 2141? Okay, moving on, we've touched on 2273 embodied carbon. Just a quick summary, it requires a 30% reduction in embodied carbon emissions by the 2030 code. The 2273 allows us to do it over the course of a couple code cycles. So we have a glide slope there. It doesn't have to happen all in one rulemaking. And then requires a report to the legislature to report the progress. And that's about all the impact for SBCC on that one. Chell, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. The question is kind of about whatever fiscal note we put forward. We already considered embodied carbon this cycle. And it seems like we probably would do that next cycle as well, whether it passes this year or not. So I guess I'm wondering, to the extent that if we're already considering this, would the fiscal note need to include additional time for embodied carbon consideration if we're already going to be doing that, probably based on this cycle, what we've done?
It would be my opinion that we probably should still have the fiscal note impact in there. Without this one passing in the last session, we had proponents bring forward the embodied carbon proposal that we have for the 2024 codes. If we're doing this as a legislative task, there's some other deliverables in here. They're not major ones, but this has proved to be a complex topic that spanned over 3 code cycles for the SBCC involvement, and unforeseen or being unable to tell how complex this might be to get it across the line, and hearing that we've had a lot of stakeholders wanting to be more engaged in this process. I think it'll take some specialized effort on the SBCC to bring it forward fully in compliance with this if it passes. Tim.
Yeah, just Dustin, when you were doing your summary earlier, you kind of glossed over what does 2273 do in a couple of sentences.
So it puts some reporting on products and materials used in buildings in an effort to start tracking what's going into buildings, and then the designers of buildings that are going to be covered, they're going to be 100,000 square foot IBC buildings. So not every building constructed in Washington will have to comply with this embodied carbon appendix that's targeted for the International Building Code. Once we get the products listed in there, the designers are supposed to use either regional EPDs, which are environmental product declarations, which kind of specify how much global warming potential that the product has and what kind of greenhouse gases that is left by its carbon footprint before it adds to the building's carbon footprint. And so it's asking for designers to, before construction starts, design the building to reduce embodied carbon emissions by calculating products that are being put into the building. And then before the building's complete, to recertify that as being compliant, so that the jurisdictions can then review that documentation before its final C of O is issued on that. And I'm not the most well versed in embodied carbon, but I think I've got most of the components there laid out.
Yeah, this is all, it's Tim again. This is all coming back to me now. Anderson Construction, Scott can talk more about it when he's here, but this one adds costs. He did a pilot project with embodied carbon, adds cost to the jurisdiction who's reviewing it, and it adds cost for the developer of the building over 100,000 square feet. So I sent a few emails out on the topic to SBCC members, just documenting exactly how much it cost an actual project when Anderson did a pilot on it a few years ago. So it's another added cost.
Tom?
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that maybe we can reserve our discussion on these bills in depth for a little while here. Maybe even have a longer meeting scheduled for the next several, just so that we can have these discussions. We've got some things in other business that are of a very timely nature that we need to get to. And so perhaps, Dustin, if you can get through these, and then if people want to flag them for discussion afterwards, that we just do that at this time. Because we've only got 10 minutes, or well, now 7. So I guess we should try and get to the other business section if we can. Thank you.
So what I'll do then is move through and just address the very new bills. I'll give a quick summary and we can get to our other business portion here pretty quick. I think I can do it in just a couple minutes. For the rest of our high priority bills, they were there for 2025 session. We can re-review those in depth a little bit at the next meeting. Medium priority bills, we have a new one, House Bill 2228 with a companion bill, Senate Bill 6001, proposing scissor stairs for the International Building Code. Scissor stairs are a space-saving concept that should allow maximizing residential space on smaller properties. And scissor stairs are essentially separated stairs that occupy the same stairwell without, kind of look like a double helix. SB 5941, Schools and Renewable Energy. This is a low priority bill, but it's allowing some exemption for schools that might be required under the current code to install renewable energies on their properties to be exempt. So looking at a way for school districts to save monies if they qualify. There's some specifications for the types of school districts that are allowed to seek that exemption. In the monitoring bills, we have a new agritourism bill. Last session in 2025, there was an agritourism bill that would allow certain agritourism buildings to not have to comply with the building code. This one brings back agritourism, but it specifically states that the building code will apply. The main difference is that the uh, local jurisdictions can't require conditional use permits for specific agritourism activities. So this one's low priority, and we're monitoring it just in case it's modified and brings back some sort of building code impact. For factory built structures 2151, this one doesn't affect the SBCC, but it does name the international codes as potential sources for information when the Department of Labor and Industry is making rules in relation to how they review factory built structures. HB 2221 or 2212 for washing machine microplastic will require microplastic filters on the downstream sides of industrial and residential washing machines. It's been found that microplastics are coming from these machines are a major source of microplastic pollution in the Puget Sound and other water sources. This one is not interpreted to affect any building codes directly, but if it is modified, it could impact the plumbing code. SB 5885 seeks to give a density increase bonus on housing developments owned by religious organizations where they're designating that housing for low-income households. I believe it reduces the threshold for the religious organizations to meet from 100% of the development being dedicated to low income to just 50%. The SB 5928 wildfire risk models doesn't affect the SBCC, but describes how insurance providers use risk assessment in Washington and sets up an appeals process for homeowners who might have had things change since the risk assessment was conducted for their property. So it doesn't affect any wildland urban interface code provisions, but since it's involved with the wildfire risk, we are going to keep an eye on that one. And then these two at the bottom here, I haven't had a chance to fully review. SB 6001 goes along with 2228. It's just companion for the scissor stairs. Directs IBC tag to review that and make recommendations. And then the distributed energy resources, I haven't put eyes on just yet. Krista,
Yeah,
do
it
you
doesn't affect the council. It just
Okay.
looks at utility connections for the most part.
Okay.
All
So
right.
with that one, we're done with the quick one. And then if anybody has questions on any of these, please shoot me an email. I'll be happy to converse off the channel with this one.
Okay, thanks. That's a lot of work, and we appreciate your work there. Representative Rammel, you've got some things for other business.
Yeah, thanks. If it's okay, Mr. Chair, to jump to other business. I don't have a ton of time to go into it right now, but would just say at our last of these legislative committee meetings, I took some notes, went back, worked with staff. Dustin has been helping think through what a bill could look like for this session. We've got a draft. It's got some unfortunate complexities to it. And the two big things that the bill would do would be eliminate the requirement for codes to be adopted and then sit through the next legislative session. I think that's good policy, but for complicated reasons, it's tough to do this year. So I guess what I would ask folks on this committee to just shoot me an email if you're like, hey, we really need this year. If you think it matters a lot, I'm open to hearing that and I'm willing to work on it. But I need to know that it's important to do it this year for this current 2024 code cycle rather than in a future year when it will be a little bit easier to get it done. And then have it in place in essence for the 2027 cycle. The second thing the bill could do is raise fees to increase funds for the Code Council to be able to bring on additional staff and or pay for those economic impact analyses that, we really want to see done well. Again, willing to do that, but I do need to get more details on what those, what the costs are so that we're not just sort of arbitrary. I'm not willing to just arbitrarily raise fees without having a clear indication of what that looks like. So that's the information that's kind of pending and outstanding. Happy to talk with folks about it further.
Do we want to entertain a motion to maybe extend for 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, if people are able to, I'd certainly be open to that.
Yeah. I'm just going to move to extend for 15 minutes to give us a little buffer.
Perfect.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to extend the meeting for 15 more minutes till 3:15. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Go ahead, Todd.
I have a different topic, but I do want to thank Representative Rammel for your work on that, and we do understand the considerations right now. So,
yeah, and I'd like to comment on that too, real quick, Todd,
Okay.
before you start yours.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it brings to light some issues with, the financing, in the SBC and maybe not having access to some of the money that's there, having a bank account that's growing for kind of an unknown reason. Maybe some other issues, that, from some cities that may have overpaid that need to be paid back and, some other things maybe. I don't know the full extent of everything, but I think we should kind of try and take that all in this effort too. So, Representative Rammel, did you have something on that?
Yeah, just responding to that, Tom, I think you're right. Like at this point, over the last few years, it really does look like the council has brought in more money than it's spent. I don't think we need a bill. I think we need budget authority, and I'm happy to work on that. That's something we could tackle, I think, without having an independent bill.
Okay, that'd be.
I think because everything's up in the air right now in the Appropriations Committee.
Yeah, in one way, we don't want to expose extra money, but
Yeah, good thing.
We'll be careful.
Could
Okay,
we ask
thanks.
staff to verify that that we have plenty of money to do all the economic analysis and all the other things without increasing permit fees?
I can't, I don't have the information to verify that. I have what Tom said, that our bank account has been growing, is accurate. But to say that we could potentially have expenditure authority to really just knock the ball out of the park this code cycle or the next one, but it wouldn't be sustainable into the future, as I understand it at this moment.
Yeah, so it's a more complex thing. I mean, somebody audits that account, so we got to figure out who does that, and then see what's really going on with it. So, okay, Todd.
Okay, I have
One quick moment. Tim's had his hand up for quite a while. I don't know if it's hidden
I think
behind.
it was a legacy. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Todd.
maybe first to conclude that one, then I have two other things. I think we've revealed a lot and learned a lot this year on that topic. So I think the work is valid, and it seems to me that there is a need for a thoughtful kind of reform, maybe maybe minor, maybe major, but I think we should get through this cycle. I think that seems obvious now. Let's get through this cycle and report back, once we conclude. So related, and in that, with budgets and with fiscal notes, I have a couple questions. As we've kind of learned over the year, the council has never acted as like a governing board over the administrative side of that DES is tasked with, right? We don't have really that structure in place, or we haven't used that. We revealed that we probably have some authority and responsibility for approving budgets, but we're not sure where what that really means in terms of teeth, because it only seems like we have a lever to not not support it, right? And take action against it. So um, I only say that in the sense that it raises the question to me of how are fiscal notes going to be derived this year? Because a lot of the work we do is on a volunteer basis. It's a heavy lift by the appointed council members and by the stakeholders that show up for these tags and so forth. And I've never paid attention, honestly, on how fiscal notes and are presented to the legislature from probably DES, right? And I'm not sure that we have any business in having oversight over that. But when there are asks like this, that I think the council is here to support and are willing within our normal business, we realize that triggers DES time, but we don't have any, necessarily say in the fiscal note and how that's presented to legislature. I'm not real concerned about it, but I just wanted to raise that question.
Well, so just to respond to how that's kind of done in the past is we take a look at what we anticipate the rulemaking need to be. So that's where the kind of spirit of if we can get legislation or legislative asks of the SBCC to align with the normal code cycle and not be off rulemaking or off cycle rulemaking and try to get it couched as much as possible into the normal cycle, that's the way we can get the fiscal impact reduced as much as possible. So when we're doing fiscal notes, we're taking a look at the anticipated meetings, hearings, and everything else there. And as part of that, we're not accounting for volunteer time. That's the one thing that you're pointing out that is definitely not accounted for in the fiscal note. But there is, potential travel expense for the council and stuff like that that is accounted for. So, over since COVID, travel expenses paid out by the SBCC account have dropped quite a bit. We've gone to a more online process, and so we're not reimbursing council members for travel. We're not getting the request for the reimbursement. So there's some budgeted money there that is not being spent. But for the most part, I think we're catching all the actual business happenings. It's the volunteer time that I think that we've heard a couple of times over the last year that is really not represented in the kind of economics of what the council expenditures are.
And there's prevailing wage rates for all of that. That should be accounted for in that regard. I mean, as in the counties, we got to pay prevailing wage, for everything we do, which, usually doubles the cost of our projects. So it should be represented, I think, to the state that that's the real cost of this.
Well, I will work with NDES to see if we can get that metric brought into the way we're developing our fiscal notes and inform on progress we make on that.
I can defer to Representative Rammel before I bring up my second topic.
Thanks, Todd. I was actually going to ask a clarifying question on your earlier point when you said that you feel like we just need to get through this cycle and then we can make changes in the future. Am I hearing you correctly that the change to the requirement for the code to sit through a legislative session essentially at the beginning of 2027 it does not feel like that's an urgent and then we'll adopt that for a few, put that on the to-do list for a future year for the next cycle?
I can give my personal opinion, and I've been on the record. I would really like to see it change, and I would like to push through as fast as we can adopt and implement, knowing that we've concluded we likely have a delay. But I'm very understanding of the reality of what the legislature is facing, and I think it's up for the council to really speak as a whole on that.
Okay. So I'll just be transparent. I'm leaning towards not doing that work this year and not introducing that part of the bill. If somebody else has a contradictory opinion, please speak up. If not, right now, shoot me an email in the next 24 hours.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. The next topic is a reminder to everyone that we are scheduled, the State Building Code Council, to participate in a workshop in House Local Government on Tuesday at 10:30. The topics, to my understanding, are an update on the building codes and also on the single exit and multiplex. And Roger's not here today, but I talked to Roger yesterday, and they're at the finish line. They've substantially concluded on the single exit and then they have a couple things on the multiplex, but they would like to bring that forward. The tag, and the council that could be on the council agenda in 2 weeks that we could bundle that into the CR 102 package and have that sitting ready for rulemaking. So that's good news, and we can report that to the legislature on Tuesday. The second piece is performance-based codes as an ask to workshop it. And related to that is a bill that a few of us as individuals on the council have informed that was dropped today, and now is a bill number 2346. So we didn't discuss it today, but it is sitting available, and I believe, and as Representative Dewar is the sponsor, and that is she's chair of that committee, then I assume that will be a topic on Tuesday. So if anyone on the legislative committee has any objection, I am planning on being there. If anyone else would like to be there, I really defer to the chair here on how you would like to direct that and organize that.
Did Roger have any interest in making the trip over?
Oh, he did say, and I have to remember, I think he was going to call in.
Okay. Well, is there anybody else that wants to, be a part of it? I appreciate, Todd, you being there. You're a good spokesperson for the group. You know the subject matter, upside down and backwards. So,
and I'm happy to do. Roger committed to writing a summary. So whether I present or he does, I'm happy to do it in person.
It would be my plan to be in person at these hearings as well. And Todd, or not the hearing, but the work session, are the one for the performance-based codes, that's a separate agenda topic, I think, for that one than the SBCC update?
Correct. It's if you recall, we've had two now work sessions with local government. One last summer where we drifted into performance code, and that was an interesting topic. It wasn't intentional. And then it came up again at the second, meeting. So this is dedicated just to learning more about that, since just to be very transparent. It's focused on low-rise residential. It's going to be listed as middle housing, but I think there's probably a desire to change that to building code terminology, low-rise residential. And it really, the idea would be, if it's the will of the legislature, to take all of the learnings that ad hoc TAG has developed over the last year and really capture that. Because in order to develop the two prescriptive solutions for multiplex and single exit 6-story, we really had that TAG did a really good job of walking through the performance criteria in order to establish those prescriptive requirements, because they were really in between the codes, if you remember. So that is kind of the spirit of it. But it's going to take a lot of coordination, because there are some other bills out there, such as I don't think we did talk today about Senator Bateman's, it's not pre-approved plans anymore. It's called permit ready plans. And while that's going to focus more on L&I and commerce roles for modular housing, this would be a similar but different approach in the codes for essentially pre-certifying materials, components, assemblies, and maybe even whole systems or plans, depending. But it's really asking the legislature whether or not they would like to mandate the council to explore that in the next 3-year cycle.
And that one for L&I you just mentioned, it's asked L&I to work with Commerce and SBCC to develop those considerations for those ones. So that's one that just came across my desk this morning, and I'm not sure why it's not on the list. I might have glazed over it.
Yeah, and for transparency in the background, these groups are very coordinated, trying to make sure that we can have a consistent kind of definitions and help the legislature understand the differences between all of these different bills. Okay, that's all I
All
have.
right. Well, good. I got one final thing to say, Dustin, if you find that if we don't go through with trying to not have the wait period through the cycle, that it's not going to seriously impact staff time and, put a big crunch in your lifetimes, in the next year, then that's fine. But if you do, please speak up about that because, we got to have you guys function too. So, all right, it is 3:15. Angela, if you got something quick, otherwise we'll extend.
Yeah, I would just like to verify that if we don't move forward with that legislation on, Representative Rommel doesn't do that legislation, the council will be voting to delay code implementation. So I just want to make sure that that's on the agenda and everything coming up, if that's the decision we've made, which I'm totally in favor of. Thank you.
All right,
Yes,
anything
the
else?
implementation date will be part of that consideration as we go through that CR102 process.
All right. Any last words?
Thank you.
Michael.
Then we'll stand adjourned. Thank you. See you next week.